Bienvenidos a Warriors of Love Dynasty, el podcast. Hoy tenemos con nosotros a una mujer increíble que es Tanja Diamond, con más de 30 años de experiencia en el desarrollo del potencial humano. Tanja es la creadora de Inspire Life y de Learning Tantra, donde fusiona de manera multidimensional técnicas del Tantra clásico, del Neotantra, del biohacking y de la neurociencia, todo ello enfocado a la sanación del sistema nervioso, al balance del sistema nervioso para la liberación del trauma. Y a partir de ahí, para encontrar ese coraje radical que todos tenemos para crear la vida que merecemos y que soñamos. En este podcast la invitamos para que hable precisamente de eso, de la liberación emocional, de la sanación del trauma y del trabajo con la sombra, para a partir de ahí crear esas relaciones extraordinarias. Recordad que nuestro podcast es subtitulado, lo tendréis subtitulado en YouTube, es en Spanglish. Y nada más, comenzamos y a disfrutar.
So, hello, we are here today on a first interview of our podcast, Warriors of Love. I'm here, Santiago Velasco, with Dani, and we have today our guest, Tanja Diamond, with us to speak a little bit about all the purpose why we started this project, Warriors of Love, and to know Tanja, to know her work, and to share a little bit of her purpose also, that it's very in common with ours. So, hello, Tanja, welcome.
Hi, I'm excited to be here. Hello, everybody.
¿Qué tal, Tanja? Qué placer tenerte aquí con nosotros. La verdad que bueno, es la primera, eres nuestra primera invitada y queríamos que... Sí, ya sabes que va a ser esto Spanglish. Eres nuestra primera invitada y la verdad que es un placer tenerte aquí porque, bueno, nos inspiras a Santi y a mí, nos estás ayudando también a través de tu trabajo y queríamos que mejor que tenerte con nosotros para esta primera sesión, para que la gente pueda comprender un poco más qué es Warriors of Love y también para que una mujer tan increíble y con la experiencia que tú tienes pues pueda darnos su visión. Me gustaría preguntarte qué te parece esta idea que a nosotros nos ha surgido de crear esta comunidad bilingüe de hombres y mujeres, porque entendemos que es necesario en este momento esa unión entre hombres y mujeres que están trabajando su sanación, liberándose de sus traumas, y que llega el momento también de unirse para co-crear algo fantástico juntos y también para impactar de manera positiva a la sociedad. Quería saber tu opinión, antes que nada, sobre lo que te parece esta idea nuestra de Warriors of Love. Así que nada, Santi, ahí te toca.
Okay, so for all of our listeners, just to remember that we're going to be like a very Spanglish project here, and everything that you hear in English will be in the YouTube channel translated into Spanish. And if you have any problem, you can just go there and see our subtitles. How was that, Tanja? Do you want me to translate?
I got most of it, but give me the actual question at the end there. It was like...
Yeah, well, the question is, first of all, Dani is saying thank you for being here with us. And the question is, what do you think? What do you think about men's work? What do you think about the idea of creating this project, and what is necessary for men and women right now to work on, and what shift is going on right now in relationships and the need to do that work from your perspective?
Well, first of all, I love this project, Warriors of Love. That's an awesome project, and I'm so happy to be on your first interview of the podcast launch. And I love just being international too, being able to spread all the love and the information out into the world for men and women. And I'd like to say that basically what we really all need to be working on is ourselves. And everybody says that, it's like, oh, work on yourself, self-love, self-acceptance. But, what does that actually mean? And how do you actually do it? Because if we go into relationships, and we all do, wounded, and we go into relationships with our past trauma and our emotional baggage, first of all, we're going to pick people that resonate with that trauma. So we're going to bond through trauma instead of bonding through love and exploration. And so almost everybody, and I've been doing this for over 35 years, everybody has problems. Everybody. Nobody gets out of their childhood without something, even if your childhood is great. And nobody escapes first love and, all of that crazy anxiety and stuff when you're starting to date and you love and your first heartbreak. And especially men. Women are more emotionally resilient than men are. And when men have those first heartbreaks and those first scary moments or rejections, things like that, they really carry that wound pretty deeply into a lot of their relationships. And I know that men are even more sensitive and emotional than women are. And that doesn't mean to say that that's a weakness at all. It's a great thing to have a strong man in touch with his emotions and being able to talk about them and being able to express them and being able to put his needs first. When I say his needs first, meaning that his self-care first is incredibly important. So I think basically we all need to start with a new foundation of learning how to regulate our nervous systems and how to heal our trauma so that we enter into a relationship the best way that we can. I mean, that's our purpose, is self-management. And from there, we still have issues inside of a relationship, but the reality is they're going to be different. They're going to be different issues. They're going to be easy to fix instead of picking relationships that are wrong and then trying to make them work, which is what almost everybody's doing.
So basically the key for a great relationship is first to a new way and a better way of understanding and relating to ourselves, correct?
Yeah, our relationship with ourselves should be the biggest relationship we have. And I don't just mean like as far as love, but I also mean sexually. So we should be our best lover in all ways, like in intimate ways, in connection ways, in self-care ways. If we know how to love ourselves and even deeper, like ourselves, respect ourselves, accept ourselves, those key points right there, if we're coming from that strength, if we're coming from that ability and power, we're going to look out into the world and we're going to choose and pick our partners completely differently than when we're coming from fear and desperation and being lonely and all of those other things that where most people pick, or the misunderstanding of what attraction even is. Most people think attraction comes from their crotch, their genitals. It's like, oh, that person makes me horny. That must be a great relationship. That's not how that works. Or all love. Because even though you guys are the warriors of love, we know that just love itself is not enough. That's one part of you. Just like being horny is just one part of you. We have a full body, a mind and a full body, and it all has wisdom and understanding and the ability to connect on all of those ways. So it's not just Hollywood love, movie love, fantasy love, or hot sex. There's a lot more. There's at least 5 or 6 other main components that make up that part, even with ourselves.
Totally. And it's very interesting because in the time we've been, Dani and I working with you and following your work, you focus a lot on a somatic approach to healing trauma more than a mental approach or a therapeutic approach to this healing of shadow. You focus on the body. And that was, for me personally, that was groundbreaking. It was like, oh, really? Like, am I supposed, after I don't know how many hundreds of hours of therapy going around my trauma and, and refocusing the meaning of my life and everything, like, okay, like I'm just going under working around under my stress and repeating my patterns, like, and your perspective is different. I mean, I think it's your businesses, both of the three businesses, High Speed Evolution, Learning Tantra, and even Inspire Animal, that I didn't know you also work with animals, is based on the same, right? It's based on the work connecting with the body to heal the trauma, right?
Absolutely, because so talking about your trauma or talking about your problems is good if you've never been able to say it out loud, right? But part of it is trauma happens in the body more than it happens in the brain. And so our cells remember everything. Our subconscious mind remembers everything. Our energetic system remembers everything. So if you're talking about trauma, connects into our chemistry. When you get traumatized, and let's define trauma for this event. Trauma is not something violent that happened to you or something really heinous that people might think about. Oh, my dad shut me in the basement for 5 weeks and didn't feed me. That's trauma for sure, right? But it doesn't have to be trauma like that. Just simply when you're a baby, not being held or your needs not being met is trauma to the nervous system, right? And so it's not, I think that was traumatic. It's what your chemistry and body does when it feels the neglect or the lack of somebody coming to you when you're a baby and you're crying. So pre-verbal trauma is between before birth and 2 years old. You'll never be able to talk about because you had no words to identify what was going on. So there's a lot of pre-verbal trauma that happens that most people carry around for their entire lives because they can't talk about it. There's nothing to talk about. They just know something's wrong and they keep repeating these self-destructive patterns. So when I was working on healing the trauma that I'd had in my childhood, and I had quite a lot, both overt and covert trauma that was obvious and trauma that wasn't obvious. And did the therapy thing, went on to do, all of these like supposedly crazy things, everything. I was searching the planet, basically. How do you actually heal trauma instead of disconnect from it, cover it up, which is another way, disassociate, just not feel anything anymore. There's so many ways, or overdo it, like run patterns that are like, in the opposite direction. And I didn't find anything that was sustainable or worked. So I started looking into, okay, so my work with animals, I worked with animals before I worked with people. And when animals are traumatized, it's pretty clear they have behavioral issues, they have all sorts of things. And I had a gift with working with animals and being able to see where they held their trauma in their body. An animal's not going to talk to me verbally, right? So how do you help an animal heal trauma? Well, it's through energetic and somatic body work. It's through touching the animal in different places in certain ways that causes them to take a deep breath and release it. And that idea of contraction and expansion started me on the journey of, so when the body contracts in fear, it'll get held and the breath gets stuck. And so usually we shake after fear or trauma. Big trauma will shake. And that's a way to release the trauma from the nervous system. But we're not allowed to do that a lot as people. People will do something to cut that experience down. So that freeze response or that flight response, the different responses are usually about contraction. And if it's hard or goes on repeatedly, it builds a neural pathway in the brain that says, this is normal. This is how we are. Our chemistry changes, right? Our neurochemistry. Our reactions and patterns change, our body tension changes, our breath pattern changes. People can even become reverse breathers. Instead of the natural belly breathing, they stop doing that and they breathe high in the chest and they never take a deep breath again. And so there's a lot that happens. So through that exploration, and then with my Tantra lineage, which is not the Neo-Tantra that most people think about sex, but actual transformation practices, and neurobiology. I wanted to be a neurosurgeon, so I had a heavy background in science, and that I started to figure out how to put these pieces together and how to actually go, we have to do a multidisciplinary approach. We can't just heal And you know my thing, the why doesn't matter. Why did it happen? What happened? That doesn't matter. That doesn't heal you. You can I can take somebody and know nothing about them and start them from here forward and clear their trauma. But people want a story and tell their story. And every time you do that, you build that neural pathway deeper and deeper and deeper, and it's harder actually to get over the trauma. Science is caught up. There are now things called neuroaffect. The somatic psychology is becoming a new big thing because psychologists and therapists are realizing, I got my person in my chair for 10 years, and they've talked about all of this, and they still have trauma. So what do we do? So yeah, that's a little bit of, I mean, you know, obviously could go on for a long time about that, but that's it. You can't heal your nervous system by talking about it. That's the short version of that.
That's amazing. And in your perspective, well, you mix also all these Oriental philosophies and Oriental practices regarding to Tantra and all this, and then you connect them also with science-based research. So you're very like multidisciplinary approach. You have a very multidisciplinary approach to these practices. It's not like, and it's interesting because for our Western mind, sometimes it's difficult to, you know, just accept the practice because maybe you can get an instruction from you so simple as do a 5-minute breathing practice, but the brain or the mind would just not accept, like, it can't be so simple to work on this and to heal myself and to connect with myself. I guess I have to, I don't know, do some kind of weird retreat in Tibet or something.
Right. Yeah. So the Tantra is actually, and I don't know if in Spain, Oriental includes things like Asia, but it's more like Indian practice, you know, than Chinese or Japanese, but Indian practice. Yeah, the thing about Tantra is it was not the Neo-Tantra, which is sex, but classical Tantra is science. And most people don't realize it. Tantra means the path, the scientific treaty or the path of. And so those Tantra masters were the grand explorers of life, and they believed if it can occur in nature, then it can occur in us. So there are animals that regenerate their limbs. So my lineage was very interested in limb regeneration, cellular regeneration, raising the dead, because they're animals that hibernate and look like they're dead. How did they do that, right? And so there was all of this really interesting experimental stuff they did on themselves to conduct that exploration into nature. And so science is catching up to the stuff that I learned 35 years ago, and I find that really interesting. So I know that our Western minds want, you know, science is the proof, right? Whereas all of these practices have been proven without science, Western science, for, you know, thousands and thousands of years. And now science is going, oh, here we can prove it, which is really cool. Like I learned that at the moment of conception, there was a spark. To me, that's the agreement between energy and matter creating cohesion. Well, just about, I think it was 5 or 7 years ago, they saw that. They actually have it now, and it was big news. Woo, there's a spark at the beginning of when the sperm meets the egg and, you know, conception happens. So I think the really important thing to understand, too, is nobody's going to do what classical Tantra masters did. So my teacher said, you need to take these practices and distill them into things that are going to work today. My mind says, and they need to work quickly, they need to be effective, they need to be permanent, and they need to be short because nobody's doing hour-long practices. I mean, how many hour-long practices on healing would you do? Like you said, you could go spend $1,000 going to these 10-day retreats, doing this, doing that, and all of those will take you into a feeling, sometime of bliss. You come out of a workshop, you're like, I've got it, I'm healed, it's awesome, I love everybody. And you've swung the other way too far. Now you're all like blissed out, which is not real either. That's the height, you know, traumatizing your nervous system in a different way. So you know, when you say, and the simplicity, you said it, the hardest thing I ever have to convince anybody of is, yes, when you're doing this 5-minute practice, it's working no matter what. Even if you don't feel it, it's working. And people are like, and you guys have done this, so you know, and people are like, what? How can that be? Do you know how much hours and work I put into all this? How can I just do this? And you're like, and it works. I don't feel it working. I'm not having some miraculous experience. And yet over time you realize I'm changing. How is that? I love that. It's like magic.
Bien, pues yo quería preguntarte también, Tanja, ahora que estás hablando mucho del tema del trauma, que sé que es una de tus especialidades, con toda esta unión de técnicas antiguas y nuevas que utilizas, que es una curiosidad, pero para mí, espero que también sea interesante, en este camino de sanación del trauma, ¿qué diferencias encuentras entre los hombres y mujeres de cara a la sanación, si hay alguna diferencia? Y también, por meter un poquito algo que, bueno, es más que nada una cuestión mental, pero ¿sientes que hay algunos de los dos, hombres o mujeres, más traumatizados o estamos igual de mal? Estamos igual de necesitados.
So I think he's saying, if I got this right, that is trauma, is it the same in men and women, and do we react the same way?
Yeah, that with your experience, like, does it show, like, are we both the same amount of, do we have both the same amount of trauma in men and women? And if it shows differently in men and women, and what do you see there?
Yeah, well, frequently, so first of all, trauma happens the same because our nervous systems are relatively the same. So as far as that, how we, everybody gets traumatized, how we react to trauma is different in each individual, not as much, though if you wanted to say stereotypically, let me think about this for 1 second. I don't think that's true. People think that men shut down. Like if you had to say, oh, men that have suffered trauma are closed and shut down. Well, actually, that's not always true, because there's those men out there that are really like loud and, just, but there may mainly a lot of anger energy or frustration energy that comes from that. So, yeah, so I think women bring grief forward more and men bring anger forward more. So if there was one emotion that I had to tag, the response of being sad, the response of not getting your needs met, the response of being lonely, and which is what trauma really does, is disconnect you from that feeling of acceptance and that feeling of love and that feeling of knowing you're worthy and worth it. Men will typically have an underlying anger and frustration. Even if they're not wandering around angry, they'll have that more feeling of frustration and irritation and anger and desperation. Women will tend to get more towards the broken-hearted, grief, fawning kind of behavior, which is people-pleasing. Trying to be nice, but not understanding that kind and nice are two different things. But that's stereotypical because, there's plenty of women. I was the angry woman. So, I was the one that was like, fuck you, I was that one. And I've been with plenty of men who were the grief-stricken, part. So I think in general, I'll go back to my original thing, which I think most people, and it might be cultural too, across different cultures, depending on how women are allowed to be or men are allowed to be in the culture, can influence that too. But at the core of it all of us feel, and with trauma, something's broken. Something's just not right. We know that. We can't pinpoint it. We may not know what, but it seems like life isn't as easy as it should be, or happiness isn't as easy as it should be, or there's always problems with love or sex.
So I'm curious, because the way I feel this when I try to make sense of it is, evolution has been harsh. Like evolution in this planet has been very, very harsh. And for human beings, especially as we've been evolving to levels that maybe that no other animals have, right? So right now, in the moment we are right now in history, where we have this quality of life and we have this situation where we are starting to settle down our basic needs and automation and technology, we are start to see and start to grasp new levels of being where all that past conditioning is just not working anymore for us. So that is all that conditioning that is right now just it doesn't work. That's what our trauma really is. It's just all our that's what it is. All our rubbish conditioning that is just not actualized for the era we're living right now. So it just need to be reconditioned by new patterns and new informations and new way of being. So it's not when we say like, how is it possible that we can all be traumatized? So that's the normal, like we all have trauma. So we all really have trauma because right now we are starting to grow into a new way of being that's where all that conditioning, past conditionings and ways of relating is just not useful.
It's a perfectly beautiful point, because if you talk about trauma, there's your personal trauma, there's evolutionary trauma, there's environmental trauma, and then there is technology trauma. So basically our brains, the way we lay down neural pathways, and neural pathways are these super highways in your brain that have had a very big purpose. But way back when, so if we take a little short trip through evolution, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, we had very little decision making and pathways we needed to build. Things were like, don't eat the red berries, they kill you. Right? So we don't eat the red berries, they're going to kill us. And actually, this works better in a story. So Baby Larry is a story I like to tell a lot. Baby Larry is an osprey, and an osprey is one of it's a bird of prey that fishes, and it's the most efficient bird of prey hunter on the planet. They're beautiful, they're fabulous, and they're the only bird that when they pick up something vertical, they'll use their thumbs to turn it so that it's in line with their body. It's pretty cool. They actually can do that. Anyway. So Baby Larry is born, and Baby Larry starts laying down neural pathways right away in his brain. And those are the things that are automated. Like, we don't think about walking, talking, things like that. Those are all pathways, right? Automatic. And Baby Larry learns that Mama, Papa come, and they give him food. He cries, food comes, right? That's his first one. But he's never going to be a successful hunter if that's all he lays down. So the mom has to teach him, hey, Baby Larry, come to the edge of the nest now. So she goes by and sits on the edge and waits for him to come to her. Oh, go to Mama, get food, new neural pathway. Then she takes off, and he's got to fly to her, and then she'll feed him. Oh, I got to fly to get food, right? So this goes on until basically one day, she's out over the water. She drops the food. He sees her pick it up. She drops the food. He sees her pick it up, and he's like, oh, I got to catch the food. And then she drops it in the water, and then she picks it up out of the water. Pretty soon, Baby Larry, in a space of 3 months, has learned how to fish. Now, all those are pathways, and the last biggest one, because he does it over and over and over again, is how to spot fish and catch them. Now, we used to have relative simplicity in our lives. We all have to agree, before the advent of electricity, we were living really different lives. We were sleeping different. We were grounded different. We were different, had a different lifestyle. So our brains are still trying to lay down all those neural pathways, and they are. But now there's a lot of confusion because we're learning a lot of stuff that may have nothing to do with a healthy lifestyle at all. And so that programming then that we're getting is, first of all, mass neural pathways that we believe are survival. If your mom told you something like, if you don't put your coat on when you go outside, you're going to die. And they may not say that overtly, but there's a lot of things. And it's like warm outside. It's warm. You don't need your jacket, but you take your jacket anyway because you're going to die if you don't take your jacket. Well, that might not serve you later on, right? That could be something that's not really helpful, but you do it all the time. You don't think about it. You don't think about it because somebody told you that. How you go to the bathroom, what you eat, how you live, what you think, how you feel. Most of us believe that we have free will. And I'm here to tell you that's laughable because you are programmed. 97% of the decisions you make are subconscious programs, and you don't even know it. So that is not free will in my book. So add on, technology, the chemistry of what happens with technology, lack of sleep, the blue lights, everything else like that. So now we've got nervous system disorders that aren't just from overt, parental or society trauma, but we have electronic trauma that we're really starting to suffer. Our brains, our subconscious mind, our chemistry has not cannot catch up to what's happening right now. So the trauma is real. Environmentally, like poisons, pesticides, you guys are great. So Europe is we feed our kids stuff that 27 countries have banned over here in the US. We're crazy with the stuff that we do, what we're willing to put up with, all of that. So there are societies way, way better than what we're doing. But, what you eat, what you watch, sound, there are only 2 silent places in the world left where there's actual silence. So noise affects us. Most of us are looking at computer screens all day. That light blinking really fast affects us and our brains. Most of us don't get out enough and get on the street. Rubber shoes. We're not barefoot on the earth. That affects us. So there's so many things that are affecting us that, I can call trauma because it is disruptive to our nervous system and chemistry. So just let's take trauma and say something that disrupts your electrical system, which is your nervous system, which disrupts your chemistry, which disrupts your way of thinking, being, and living and functioning on the earth. Pretty big.
Whoa. So basically there the question now is, what the hell does it mean to be to be healthy, to be a psychologically healthy and balanced human being, right?
Absolutely. And, can we get there? Yes. Because at first, understanding that your nervous system is in a harsh state, unless if you're living out in the country somewhere and you grew up on a farm that's not using pesticides, or you're living a more natural lifestyle where you're getting outside a lot more than inside, where you're sleeping the way people should sleep when the sun goes down and getting up early in the morning, and you're drinking good water and things like that, and you're communing with nature. You're spending time observing, being in nature and slowing down, right? Then you're probably way healthier than somebody who's living a city lifestyle. Somebody who's surrounded by concrete, never gets out into nature, is always indoor environments, is disconnected from humanity. If you're living in that's why people want to go to communes, right? In communities where they're all a bunch of people together that are doing that, because it feels better. That feels better. So you can achieve. So if you say your nervous system is you're either in crisis and threat mode, or you're in disconnect. So those are the 2 places that most people's nervous system are. And from there, we work to stabilize the nervous system, which is what all the practices that I teach in my courses and stuff do, right? Stabilize the nervous system. And from there, we build resilience of our nervous system. Last year, I went through COVID, cancer, and chemo. Those are 3 pretty big things for somebody to go through. And people were asking me, at the end of it all, oh, so how is everything? And I'm like, yeah, fine. Oh, you survived cancer. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to survive cancer till something kills me. And then I'll figure out what killed me, and then we'd know whether I survived cancer. And I laugh about it. People are like, what are you laughing about? It's like, oh, dude, it's just part of life. It's a thing, right? And so if you asked me, when somebody the other day said, oh, how are you? And they kind of cocked their head, and I'm like, why are you cocking your head at me? Like, how am I? What do you, oh, cancer. That's so 2020. Seriously, I have moved on. We're going. So if your nervous system is resilient, you can handle the stuff life throws. That's what it's supposed to be like. Mm-hmm. Resilient nervous systems means you don't get thrown off if you lose your job. Something big happens. You're like, when the doctor said, oh, you have surprise cancer. That's what he said too. That was really funny. Oh, and by the way, you have surprise cancer. I'm like, surprise cancer. That sounds exciting. What's that? And I wasn't in shock. And I was just like, I wasn't disconnected. I was like, okay, what do we do? That's a resilient nervous system.
The doctor had to be impressed. I mean, like in that kind of situation, that's like, is this a healthy woman? Is this a healthy human being? Like psychologically healthy, having cancer, but where did that reaction come from?
Well, he was very dire. And very dire. And he said, you do realize I just said you have cancer, right? And I'm like, yeah, I heard you. And I said, and my options are chemo, because you already took everything out when you did the hysterectomy. So what do we do from here? And he's looking at me and he goes, I said, I'm not in shock and I'm totally okay. It's like a thing. Let's do something with it. But he told me later, he said, nobody has that response. And he goes, I wasn't sure if there was, he thought I might be mentally ill because I had a normal response to something. And when I told him, you guys will laugh about this, when he said, oh, chemo, you're going to lose all your hair. I said, oh, finally my pussy will be in fashion. And when he didn't laugh, I changed doctors.
That's like so Tanja. Like I imagine just the doctor saying, okay, what's going on? Like I can't handle a patient like it.
No, he just looked at me like, and so I said, thanks so much, I'm going to change doctors. And he was like, you need chemo right now? And I said, no, I need to actually take a moment and integrate this information and decide what I want to do. But they were just, no, you can't leave it. I'm like, no, trust me, I've got this. So yeah, but that's a healthy nervous system, means that you feel the things that are happening, but you respond instead of react. Most of us are reactionary, right? Something happens and we react to it. Now my emotions, I'm a very passionate person. My emotions are very big and deep and, and I feel things deeply. So the feeling things deeply doesn't mean that I have to react from that emotion, right? I feel it. You can't change your emotions. You can't stop them. You can't control them. You wouldn't want to. But what you can do is feel them and take that breath in that moment and decide how you want to respond. That you can do. And that's a skill set we should all have.
The crazy thing with that is that I think that it's something that we do hear a lot in personal development, but it's all like, you shouldn't react, but then it comes the moment and you just react. So like, okay, how do I not react? Like, okay, I just repress my reaction, but it's not like that.
No, absolutely. It's not like that at all. So what happens is, let's say, you guys, I think you've seen, the only thing that I don't have, there's some things that I don't have the ability to override, right? So a hot, sexy man shows up without a shirt on, and if I have any attraction at all, I'm going to blush. It's like crazy because I'm definitely, I'm almost 60 and I'm not somebody who's not been around the block, you know what I mean? And so it's funny, but that's a reaction. That's a visceral somatic reaction that even if I get my mind around, I can't change. So that is a reaction that I have, right? I can get on top of it. It takes about 5 minutes though. And so that first 5 minutes, it's a dead giveaway. I'm like, oh my God, seriously, I feel like so stupid. And, luckily, most men find it charming because otherwise they tell me I'm too scary. So at least that makes me feel a little better. But we can, like, you're having a fight with somebody, or you're feeling defensive, or you realize that you're headed down a pathway that that you're always going to. You have the ability to take that breath and change that moment of what comes out of your mouth, right? That's the thing. So you could react, your emotions react, you respond. But the more resilient your nervous system is, the less things bother you. Like, it's just like they roll off your back because you're not already too full. most people are already too full. Their nervous system is already overwrought. And so it doesn't take much to tip you over. And whether that means that you go for a drink, or you do some other addiction, you ejaculate a lot during the day to try to calm your nervous system down, or you disconnect through video games. There's a really big one that's happened to society that's as big addiction as porn addiction is right now. That's really messing people up hugely. And so a lot of these, we have speaking of evolution, we didn't have a lot of stuff to distract ourselves with 1,000 years ago, right? Like you can find some substances, but there wasn't the stuff that there is today at the click of a finger, like Facebook, like dopamine scrolling,
Anyway, it's crazy constant stimulus. Like as you know, I spent like a few weeks ago just a week in the beach without anything, like no phone, no Xbox, no screen, no internet, no phone, no anything. And it was crazy. It was like, what the hell? This is so natural. Like I feel so connected to myself after a few days of nearly dying, of course. But at the end, it felt like a parallel reality, and then you come back into the world and it's this bombarding of just doing stuff, just connecting, Instagram, just Facebook, email projects, and then you start getting into this stress, and then you want to get out of this stress with more dopamine. So you just go and start, let's have a drink, or let's do. So it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're not going to survive it. So you're seeing the effects physically, emotionally, everything. We can't survive what we're doing. And so, part of my mission and part of yours is the idea that, we want to help that healing of that relationship with ourselves and with others. And we need to do something because we are not, we're seeing more and more effects all the time of inflammatory diseases and all sorts of other things that are epic levels because of the stress levels. We're living in stress levels that we were not made to live in over and over again. So it's I think of it as a pretty big a crisis of humanity, actually.
Yeah.
Pues sí, la verdad me está encantando esta conversación y eso que no la estoy entendiendo totalmente. Ya la entenderé con los subtítulos al 100%, pero es fantástico escucharte, Tanja. Y bueno, para ir terminando, me gustaría preguntarte también en qué estás ahora, cuáles son tus nuevos proyectos. Hemos escuchado que incluso tienes pensado venir a España, a lo mejor a las Islas Canarias, pero no sé qué es a nivel laboral. Ahora, ¿cuáles son tus nuevos proyectos? Conociéndote un poquito y sabiendo que eres una mujer enormemente curiosa y que siempre estás explorando nuevos territorios. Cuéntanos un poquito cuáles son tus nuevos proyectos.
All right, give that to me.
Yeah, it was amazing to.
Other than I've talked too much. No, he didn't say that.
It's been a very, very, very quick conversation, like very intense conversation.
It went by really fast, right?
It went by very fast, and Danny was wondering if you can let us know a little bit about what are you up to right now? What are your projects that you're running right now, and what are your plans for the present, future, and future?
Oh my goodness. Well, that's another hour, but I'll condense it. Down. And first I wanted to say, Danny, this is the least I've heard you speak. So I've monopolized the conversation. So basically what I'm doing right now is I've had 4 years ago, in an unfortunate incident, I lost everything, all my business of over 25 years. Servers went down, and all my websites, everything I'd ever written, every product I'd ever created, about 30 seconds, everything was gone. Pretty devastating. It came on the heels of losing the love of my life. And so I've been in the process of rebuilding, and it was, took a year off and then started. But It was last year in December that I remembered that, you know, my mission is information dissemination, is teaching and helping people heal. And so I've kind of resurrected that. So we're in a slow start. I've taught some live classes this year, Sacred Healing for Women and the Sacred Warrior Healing for Men, which is really all about helping people connect deeply to themselves so that they can clear up issues around sexuality. So I started with healing, teaching people how to be their own sexual healers, which I think is an incredibly important part, because that's an area of our body that if we do have trauma or pain or disconnect from, it infiltrates everything we do, including our making money in our business. And so that's a pretty big thing. So I've been teaching those this year. I've still got a couples workshop coming up here. These are all online. So one for couples, and then in August, a singles connection, which should be really exciting and fun. And that's singles learning how to connect deeper with the opposite sex and do some really great, fun projects that I'm still coming up with in my brain about how I want to do it. But then everything is going to go online courses. So people will be able to, evergreen courses, be able to go and say, hey, I want to take the Sexual Healing for Women course, and they'll be able to do that with a live Q&A, but take the course like most online courses are. So we'll just keep building, because Learning Tantra has to resurrect. High Speed Evolution is my personal development brand. I actually certify coaches in personal development. It's 2.5 years. It's the most intense personal development training anybody ever has to become a coach, more than Tony Robbins or anybody else. And so they're pretty badass coaches, because they have to go through it all themselves. I don't just certify people on theory. And then resurrect my beautiful animal healing work that I do, and that's teaching people how to help their pets and how to help animals in the world. And I've actually worked on white rhinos and all sorts of exotic critters, octopus, crazy stuff. So they're my greatest teachers to say if my stuff is actually working, because people can be led down a path pretty easily. Animals cannot. They pretty well tell you the truth of what's happening. So they're my litmus test. They're my, this is it. Does it work? So yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Tanja Diamond for sure. And as courses start coming up, they'll probably be on Learning Tantra. And that's what I'm going to keep doing. I'm keep building the empire back to amazement and help heal people in the world and give. So our mission is to be able to give people safe, affordable, ethical practices that they can use to empower themselves for self-healing. So one of the things I don't like is when people, therapists, whoever, practitioners, make it so that you feel like you need them forever. I want to put people's empowerment in their hands so that they understand the tools I teach them that work can they use for the rest of their life. And if trauma happens, even if you have a good resilient nervous system, stuff's going to happen in life, right? And so you should have these tools. So all our entry-level programs have donation only buttons as well, because I want to make this affordable for everybody in the world. So I guess that's it. That's it.
That's an incredible mission, and it's crazy because we're finishing the podcast now, but it feels like we've just started. Like we could squeeze out so many things out of you.
Well, have me back. We'll pick a smaller topic next time and really drill down into something. But I really appreciate being part of the inauguration, the first podcast. It's super exciting. I love what you guys are going to do. I know that you both are such beautiful men with such amazing hearts and the desire to really reach out and really help people. And I'm so really honored to have been part of your selection of starting this off.
Pues sí, muchísimas gracias, Tanja, por esta maravillosa conversación y bueno, después de escuchar un poco tus proyectos, esperamos en un futuro, como dijimos también en Warriors of Love, nuestra idea es poder traer este tipo de conocimiento y de ayuda y de apoyo a la lengua hispana, porque entendemos que sinceramente hay un hueco por cubrir ahí bastante importante. para mejorar la vida de los hombres y las mujeres de habla hispana, porque creo que sí que tienen esta dificultad de encontrar este tipo de enseñanzas más evolucionadas o más avanzadas. Y bueno, seguramente tal vez algún día podamos traducir alguno de estos cursos de Tanja, que son fantásticos, para que las personas de nuestro país y de Sudamérica pues, puedan tener acceso a esa enseñanza traducida al castellano.
Amazing. Hope we can keep the collaborations going so we can bring more of your work to our community as it grows. So thank you very much, Tanja. Thank you for being here with us. And for our audience, just let you know again, just remember that this episode will be also subtitled in YouTube. If you have any problem with the English language, you have everything there. We are 100% Spanglish and work in progress. So thank you for being here and see you in the next episode.